What does it mean to you if an officer makes mistakes during your DUI investigation? This is Christina Williams with Just Criminal Law.
And David Mann, legal storytelling specialist. Well, so there's only probably one way to know if the police officer made mistakes, and that would be looking at the video?
Well, yes, there's the video, and, they describe a bit of what happened in the report as well. So what each report has is 3 phases. There's 3 phases to a criminal investigation for a DUI. And the first phase is the driving phase. The second phase is the personal contact with the driver. And the third phase is the field sobriety tests. So during each one of those phases, the officer is trained to do and to look for very specific cues or clues. And so as we review a DUI investigation, we are not only looking at what our client did, but we're paying particular attention to what the officer did and if they did it correctly.
Okay, so in that first one, you say it's the vehicle in motion, the while the car is still moving. What is the officer supposed to be looking for, and then what have you seen that happens instead?
Well, they're looking for driving patterns that would support an allegation that the person is unable to safely operate a motor vehicle, because they have to have a reason to pull the person over. And sure, they can, stop someone for speeding, or they can stop someone for maybe not stopping long enough at a stop sign. But what we look for is, how long did the officer follow our client? Was it an extended period of time? Did they follow him for 5 minutes and maybe the only thing that they did incorrectly was, touched the white line and while they were proceeding down the highway? Or, maybe they just slightly went over the speed limit. So we watch to see what the officer notes in the report versus what's on the video.
Okay, and you know that there are certain things the officer is supposed to be doing, so it's even beyond the report. Just every officer should be looking for these things and doing things in a certain way at this point in the stop, is that correct?
Correct, and they need to have a reason to stop you. So sometimes what we'll notice is, the officer may say, the person, kind of what we touched on before, it was weaving inside their lane of travel. Well, it's not illegal to weave inside your lane of travel. Or perhaps they even accuse the client of, driving outside their lane. And I can think of a particular DUI where, the person was driving down a narrow street and one of the cars that was parked parallel in a parking spot was actually not, was sticking out a little. So he navigated around that vehicle, which he should do, but the officer used that as a reason to pull him over and said he was failing to maintain his lane of travel.
Okay, so that's phase 1, the vehicle actually moving, and now this person driving it has been stopped, and the body cam, of course, is still running, and now we're in the personal contact section of the stop. So what should be happening there, and what have you seen happens instead?
The officer a lot of times is going to try to divide the driver's attention. And what that means is, for example, they'll ask the driver, will you please give me your license, registration, and proof of insurance? And then the person is going to retrieve those documents, and they ask them a question like, what have you been up to this evening? And so it causes the person who's like, oh, where did I leave my insurance card? Or they're going through their center console trying to find their registration. And now all of a sudden they have to stop what they're doing and talk to the officer. And so he tries to throw them off a bit in, asking them to do more than one thing at a time. And when you're under stress, even when you're not under stress, sometimes it's hard to just look for something and answer someone's question, but they'll use that against the client.
Okay, so Now, in other videos, we've talked about don't talk about your day, and you don't necessarily need to submit to a field sobriety test. But let's say this person in our story here does actually submit to the field sobriety test and is now out of the car, and now there's further footage. And what should the police officer be doing, and what have you seen happens instead?
This is a very important part of the police training, where they are asking a person to do the field sobriety tests. And they've been trained to use a script, essentially. And that way it's a fair rendition of, hey, these are the directions, this is what I'm asking you to do. Now I'm going to grade you, so to speak, on how you do it. If the officer doesn't use the script or deviates at all from how the field sobriety test is demonstrated, then that causes confusion for the driver. And so if they don't administer the field sobriety tests exactly the way that they were trained, and then try to use mistakes or confusion against our client, we can obviously point out, the officer didn't give the instructions correctly, or the officer didn't demonstrate the maneuver correctly. And so we look at their training, and we're very familiar. We have their playbook or their manual, so to speak, and we compare what they're supposed to do with what they actually did. And if they're saying, the person had all of these different cues which gave me reason to arrest them, all these different things they did incorrectly which gave me enough reason to arrest them, and in fact, he didn't do the investigation correctly, or he didn't, he kind of was making it to our client's disadvantage because he wasn't being clear, then we can, ultimately say, hey, you didn't have enough reason to arrest our client, and then we can ask the judge to look at it and possibly get the case dismissed.
Okay, so there is so much information in this video footage that you as a lawyer can see, where the average person is never going to see this. So if someone needs that to on their case, how do they get in touch with you?
We'll include a link in the description where they can call, text, or chat with a member of my team anytime, day or night. Here at Just Criminal Law, we know you only get one shot at justice, so make yours count.